Hello, it's Julia Newell here from BA Life. To celebrate Global Business Analysis Day, what follows is a much enjoyed and inspiring keynote presentation from BA Life 2022, your BA Festival in a day. Please join us next year on 25th of May for BA Life 2023. Once again, bringing you the very best of business analysis talent from Scotland, the north of England, and elsewhere in the world. Sign up now to receive further details in the future on our website at www.balife.co.uk. In the meantime, sit back and enjoy Michael Christon and Words, the most powerful drug known to mankind.
There I was in a Turkish kebab house. I have to admit to being a lover of kebabs, and I don't need to be drunk. Having been on holiday the previous year in Turkey, I had made a point of learning some of their language. After all, if someone is going to take care of my wife and me, then the least I can do is say a few pleasantries in their language. So, like I said, there I was in the kebab house, awaiting my kebab, having paid my money. Once it was nicely cooked and wrapped, it was handed to me. Naturally, I said thanks, but this time I said in Turkish, thank you very much. Çok teşekkür ederim. And good night, iyi geceler. Immediately upon hearing the words, the eyes of the owner of the kebab house lit up. He smiled broadly and said, "You speak Turkish," as he reached into his fridge and pulled out a drink. "Here's a Coke to have with your kebab. Thank you." I'm the customer, and he's now thanking me, and he gave me a free drink. Oh, hello there. How you doing? Words, marvellous, aren't they? Though we so often give them little thought as they fall from our mouths or tumble onto a page. Ignorantly stumbling from one utterance to the next, we are often halfway to the conclusion of what we are saying before we consider what we have already said. Oh, how ungrateful we are. We are the only species on the planet to have such an evolved form of language with all its depth, complexity and beauty. And what do? We f*** it up. When we speak or write, our goal is to communicate our thoughts, to share our ideas, to inform others of our opinions. And yet, despite the very essence of communication being about somebody else, the reader, the listener, the viewer, we babble away as if robbed of our other senses, blind and deaf, but sadly not dumb. Okay, I'm being harsh. Or am I? Being a wonderful human being, you, like me, have a powerful brain that is constantly whirring away, helping you navigate this thing called life. So much of what you do is unconscious, done without thought. From breathing to movement, your brain runs the show with little interference from, well, you. And of course, that automatic nature extends to language and the words you use. For instance, as you listen to me now, you might suddenly feel thirsty, parched, in need of a drink. So you call out to whoever else is with you, asking for a relaxing cup of tea, warm mug of coffee, or refreshing gin and tonic, complete with ice and slice, of course. You don't have to stop and think about what you are going to say. You just say it. However, as a BA, you know only too well that automatic processes, or this is how we do it here, can so easily be flawed, ill-thought, or lacking in required detail. So why should it be any different when it comes to you and the words you use so readily? Whether at a team stand-up, during an email exchange, or when drawing out those important requirements from a stakeholder, are your words working for or against you? Do your words captivate and enthrall? Or do you like to keep it simple? And is that always the right thing to do? Hi, my name is Michael Christon, and ever since my early days in business over 25 years ago, I have always loved the potent blend of words and psychology. That fiery mixture has been responsible for much of my and my clients' success. From presentations to marketing campaigns, business proposals to email sequences, books to a deceptively simple yet carefully crafted video script that led to over $2 million in investment for an up-and-coming startup. If 2 words summed up who I am in business and the success I have enjoyed, it would be creative and, well, words. If you have ever come across me before, then you will know I just love what words can do. I love how the word "and" can replace the word "but," and dramatically increase the persuasive qualities of what you are saying. I love how the words you subconsciously use are like windows on your mind, revealing your innermost thoughts. I love the sheer power of words, and how a moment ago when I mentioned drinking, some of your fellow BAs may have suddenly felt the urge to quench that newfound thirst. Perhaps that was you too. I love how great people have used words over the centuries to captivate and inspire. Which reminds me, following what Benjamin Disraeli once said, the wisdom of the wise and the experience of ages may be preserved by quotation, and given the theme of today's presentation is indeed words, I've thrown in a few quotes along the way. Naturally, I've chosen carefully and will not be bombarding you with the crap fake wisdom cluttering social media. If Einstein and Confucius had said half the things attributed to them, they would have been too busy spouting off to ever get anything done. And of course, I love talking about words. In fact, words have been a common theme with my presentations over the last 5 years. After all, words are an endless source of wonder and discovery, with all their majesty and potential. And this presentation is no different. Today, as we journey from business analysis to sales, emotions to brain juice, dress sense to cocktails, and dodge the occasional squawking turkey along the way, you're going to discover, with just a few simple steps, just how potent words can be. As film director and producer Randall Wright once said, "Have you ever stopped to consider the power of words? Through mere words, wars have started and ended. Tender feelings have been hurt and soothed. Courage has been instilled and fear has been implanted. Lives have been destroyed and others changed for the better." So what are words? What is the point of them? Well, as American entrepreneur and author Jim Rohn once said, words do two major things. They provide food for the mind and create light for understanding and awareness. Without getting overly philosophical, words are part of language, and language is part of how we communicate. So, what's that? Well, the verb to communicate is derived from the Latin communicare, which rather intriguingly means to share, impart, inform, or quite literally, to make common. Interesting. Which, when you think about it, poses an important question, particularly when you consider this wonderful quote from George Bernard Shaw. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. So has it? Does your communication truly share and make common what is being said or written? Before I go any further, a quick word on what I am about to talk about. What follows is deliberately not some whiz-bang technique or advanced mumbo-jumbo. And again, borrowing great words from the wise, here's why. The advanced level is mastery of the basics, said Ray Mancini. That's the classic nature of people, though. We'll skip the basics and get pissed when the sexy stuff doesn't work, said Martin Rooney. When you master the basics and execute them well, there's no need to worry about the score, said Frank Sonnenberg. Order and simplification are the first steps towards the mastery of a subject, Thomas Mann. I think you get the idea. I am a firm believer that the secret to success in so many disciplines is mastery of the basics. It's often the seemingly simple stuff that makes the biggest difference. And that is certainly true when it comes to language and words. Though this does not mean simplistic. Talking of which, let's have a look at a common theme in content writing over the last decade. Over the last 10 years, an increasing number of schools of thought have suggested your language be attuned to that of a young child, commonly a 9-year-old. For example, the UK Government Digital Service, or GDS, specifically states write on gov.uk for a 9-year-old reading age. After all, it is the average reading age in the UK, and a typical 9-year-old will know about 30,000 words. Now, just to be clear, I am not knocking this or saying it is wrong. Far from it. What I want to do instead is inject context. To demonstrate what I mean, let's consider the difference between communication being functional and compelling. Functional, having or serving utilitarian purpose, capable of serving the purpose for which it was designed. Efficiency, simplicity, clear, concise, that kind of thing. Compelling, having a powerful and irresistible effect, influential, evocative, inspiring. You could say the first is about cold hard facts, and the other, well, that's a little bit more warm and fuzzy. So with that in mind, it is easy to see there is a huge difference between functional. You need to complete the use cases by Friday, or compelling. Okay, Mr. Reliable, can you complete another set of your wonderful use cases by Friday? Thank you. Admittedly, the latter is a tad cheesy, but you cannot deny it is far more appealing than the first. Of course, this is context. You know, it's kind of like going out partying with your friends while wearing a work overall complete with hard hat and hobnail boots, or doing DIY in your favourite dress or jacket. There is a time and place for everything, including being functional or compelling in your communication. And this is true of the aforementioned GDS. Yes, there is guidance to write to a 9-year-old, but there is context too. In the GDS blog, they wrote, when people have to use a government service online, it's unlikely to be the focal point of their day. Content designers must write for quick and easy reading. So if your chosen context is, like the UK government website, about getting your point across quickly and clearly, then great. Speaking as if with a 9-year-old works brilliantly. And much has been written about how to do that. However, if your context is more, let's say, emotive, such as asking for help, persuading someone to do something, putting across an opinion, or aiming to inspire, then we need to flip the coin and consider what it takes to be compelling, to motivate someone to act. The word action is about movement. Its Latin root, actionem, is about performing, doing, putting in motion. And interestingly, the word emotion is also about movement. Emotion comes from the Latin emovere, which means move out, remove, agitate. What's more, the word motivation comes from the same root as emotion. It too is about movement. So if you follow that through to its natural conclusion, if you want someone to act, if you want something to happen, an action to take place, then emotion and motivation must be important factors in what you say or write. For me, when I create some form of communication, whether a presentation like this, an email, a document, or a purposeful chat with a customer or colleague, I always consider the emotional landscape. First, how do I get their attention? Second, how do I maintain their interest in what I'm saying? And thirdly, how do I motivate the person to the point of action so that my desired result is the most likely outcome? With regard to point 2, what use is mere simplicity and clarity in language if the reader or listener fails to reach the conclusion of your communication because they quickly became bored and their brain has wandered off pondering what's for tea or which Netflix show should I binge tonight? Like any purposeful activity, communication is only truly successful when complete. You want your recipient to get to the close and be compelled to act, ideally in the way you intended. Now you may be thinking, this sounds a bit like sales. Well, relax, because BAs are better than the average salesperson. Of course, I hear you cry. Admittedly, that's not a commonly heard comparison, but let's run with it. At face value, BAs and salespeople are far removed. However, when you look deeper, a curious overlap begins to appear. In fact, if a salesperson wants to be successful, they need to be more like a BA. And I am being serious. Just search Google for sales motivation quotes, and you will find many saying things like, grow relationships, not sales. Make a customer, not a sale. Don't sell, solve their problem instead. Listen more than you talk. Show gratitude, not attitude. It is about listening, diagnosing, and prescribing. Be curious, ask questions, discover what they really want. Don't close a sale, open a relationship. Relationships. Problem solving. Listening more than you talk. That's a BA. Oh, how nice the world would be if salespeople had the attitude and grace of BAs instead. As a BA, you know the discovery and the implementation of best practices is smart thinking. If a model or concept can work in one arena, then the wise BA knows it makes sense to consider whether it'll work elsewhere too. So let's be the curious BA and turn the tables. Could the sales and marketing arena have something to offer the BA when seeking to become a great wordsmith? Do salespeople and marketers know something about emotions and states of mind that might prove useful for the BA? Well, let's consider the classic BA problem: engagement. How do you get your stakeholders, colleagues, and the powers that be to engage with you? Whether you're attempting to coax requirements for an apprehensive stakeholder, convince management that the project would run a lot smoother if agile thinking was employed, or persuade that developer that what the customer actually wants or needs is better than what they want to code, you need to be able to influence the thinking of that other party, move them to action. Whether we like it or not, we are all salespeople at some level. It doesn't matter if you're the parent trying to get the kids to bed, the partner wishing to decide that night's TV, or the BA endeavouring to do their job. One way or another, your aim is to be heard, to get your way, or dare I say, close the sale. So clearly, whether in an email, report, or conversation, what you say and how you say it is key to your success. Or to borrow from my wonderful wife, Linda Parker, former European BA of the Year, to engage people, you need to be engaging. So let's see what sales could offer the willing BA, starting with a quick overview of 2 key concepts from sales and marketing that can make the world of difference to the BA and your powers of wordsmithery. A wise philosopher who clearly had a dry sense of humour once said, "If it is true that words have meanings, why don't we throw away words and just keep the meanings?" Of course, we can't do that, but his words raise a very important point. Features and benefits is a timeless concept in sales and marketing, but far too many people in business lose the attention of the customer by concentrating on the features and rarely ever talk or write about the benefits. Fundamentally, what they have failed to do is understand the true nature of features and benefits, and this mistake can be disastrous when competing for the attention and interest of their customers. So let's set the record straight. A feature is often a physical fact regarding your product, service, or idea. I say physical because in most cases it will be something like, it's blue, it comes in 3 sizes, it can be delivered within 5 working days. As you can see from these examples, a feature is an undeniable fact and not based on opinion or emotion. Whereas a benefit is quite different. It is the meaning of the feature. Or to put it another way, the benefit is the emotional meaning of the feature. And this is where we get the obvious secret which so many business people miss. That emotional meaning is not about what you think, it is always about what your customer thinks. Because customers buy on their emotions, so it's their perception that counts, not yours. And there is our first clue about being a great BA wordsmith. It's about them, not you. If you want to motivate or move to action someone, make what you are saying or writing about that person. Only then will you stir their emotions. And this holds true when writing or talking about yourself, your team, your business, or your ideas. To help explain what I'm describing, and to quote the dictionary.com website, subjective most commonly means based on the personal perspective or preferences of a person, the subject who's observing something. In contrast, objective most commonly means not influenced by or based on a personal viewpoint, based on the analysis of an object or observation only. In other words, the object of communication can be many things, but the subject of communication is always the other party. What I'm saying is, it's about them, not you, and the great BA wordsmith always keeps that in mind. John Ruskin rather wonderfully once said, "When a man is wrapped up in himself, he makes a pretty small package." And after all, there is nothing more boring or destined to create inaction than listening to someone talk endlessly about themselves. I did this, I did that, my way, mine is all about blah, la, 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 la. Or to put it another way, me, 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 me. Such self-centric communication, whether verbal or written, is the fast track to tedium. which is the exact opposite of where you want to go with your communication. Your aim is for full-on engagement, where your recipient laps up every word and becomes enthralled with your every suggestion. And that is only going to happen when you write or talk about them. I call it you appeal, and how you ensure everything you write is primarily about your intended recipient. It is for them, it is about them, it engages them. It is their subjective experience that matters. When writing, say, an email, you can quickly check how you are doing on your you appeal by performing a word count of you, your, yours, versus me, I, my, mine. If the me content outweighs the you content, you have a problem. Now, the good news is, this is easy to correct or even avoid in the first place, and it essentially boils down to ensuring you know your audience. By having the recipient as your primary focus, you'll find your writing will naturally begin to increase in you appeal. Now, if there are still some me statements you struggle with, you can shape them to be more in the interest of the reader by rewording them like this. First, take the original statement. Second, add the words and what this means to you is. And third, complete the statement with a few words that are entirely focused on the customer reader. Now, if you want, you add the fourth step, reword as required to make it more usable. In closing, what I'm actually saying is very simple. Enough about you, more about them. So, back to features and benefits. In sales and marketing, you aim to attach customer-derived benefits to the features of you and your business. It's like having a conversation with someone where you use the same format I just described. It'll be delivered within 5 days, and what this means to you is, you will see results very quickly. As you can see, you are relating the feature to what is important to the customer. So once again, we are harking back to knowing your audience and allowing them to dictate your communication. By the way, no doubt you have already realized you don't necessarily need to have the phrase, and what this means to you is. It is merely a device to help you discover the benefit for yourself, though you can use it if you wish. It's up to you. Now, interestingly, a useful additional step is to create one of these benefit statements, and then, with that in mind, ask yourself, which means, and see how you answer, because you may arrive at an even better benefit. Now you've done that, what happens if you ask, which means again, and again, and again? This simple little trick will help you collect many possible benefits, which you can then choose from or perhaps combine into a very enticing statement that gets the customer thoroughly enthused and taking action. Again, the key is to make sure you are laser focused on what the customer values and how you relate what you offer to those values, because only then will you have a real benefit. So what does this feature and benefit stuff mean to the business analyst? Well, besides the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of salespeople could do with learning from a business analyst, business analysis is still quite far removed from sales. So why did I choose it as a source of inspiration for today? Well, it's simple. What many salespeople fail to realize, and I've encountered many when training people, the secret to sales success is to realize it isn't about the products or services being sold. If I was to ask one of them, what do you sell? And they gave me an answer about their product or service, or maybe a feature of it, then they'd be wrong. What they are actually selling is feelings. For example, if a salesperson has a system that fixes a certain problem, they're not selling the system. Instead, they're selling the confidence and calm which comes from knowing that a specific problem will be fixed. An intruder alarm is not about selling a bunch of electronics. It's about the peace of mind which comes when you know your home is safe and secure. So we're back to where we started. We're talking about emotions again. So, now let's plunge a little deeper into the recesses of your mind, because it's cocktail time. Without getting lost in the bottomless depths of neuroscience, swishing around in each of our brains is a wonderful cocktail of chemicals. This brain juice determines how well our brain works. It is the fuel for our motivation, the propellant for our actions. Get the right balance of chemicals, and stuff happens. Get it wrong, and the brain slows down, seizes up, and runs out your ear. Okay, the last bit isn't quite true, but it's a useful mental picture nonetheless. So as you can imagine, the key is to make this brain juice as potent as possible. And of course, the key is that balance of chemicals. Some are good, and some are not so good. So clearly, we want more of the good stuff. In essence, we need to make a tasty cocktail. And how do we do that? Well, it will come as no great surprise when I say we do it with words. Words stir emotions, and emotions alter brain chemistry, which means words are the raw ingredients of your perfect cocktail. And doing that is quite easy. Just remember, you're making a cocktail, not a mocktail. So it's about stimulation, not simulation, motivation, not moderation, compelling, not functional. So first, get active. As humorist and novelist Mark Twain once said, the difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. So it's time to electrify your language with active verbs. And that was an example. I could have simply said, greatly improve your language. In other words, use the adverb of greatly. Or make your language more interesting. In other words, use the adjective of interesting. However, electrify conjures so much more. Take the following 3 comparisons. Confess to you versus tell you. Suddenly, by saying confess, what follows seems secretive, intriguing, or even a little naughty. Nerve shredding versus nervelessly. It's a very visceral thing to describe a nerve being shredded. It gives me trembles just thinking about it now. Hurtle versus ran. There is an innate sense of speed with hurtle, and it almost seems unstoppable. Ran just doesn't have that. When you have a truly compelling word, you will often find it inspires a whole line of thought, and further small twists and turns go on to create truly effective communication that demands attention. For instance, imagine you have come to realize that specific activity in your business could have terrible consequences, and you wish to communicate this impactfully. You may hit upon the word devastation, which is clearly a potent word. In turn, you get the phrase devastating losses, which gives rise to devastate our bottom line. You might even want to go one step further with something like lay waste to our bottom line with devastating losses, which, as I'm sure you agree, is much better than simply saying lose money. You will have stirred their emotions, and now action is far more likely. Comedian Steve Wright once said, "What is another word for thesaurus?" Which is an awesome point. In fact, it's awesomely important that you remember it at all times. If you want to be an awesome writer, then the last thing you want to do is be repeating the same awesome word, because no matter how awesome it is, the more you use it, the less awesome it becomes. See what I mean? Awesome. Word repetition. Ugh! Let's face it, how many times have you thought to yourself, boy, I wish he would just stop saying that same word over and over and over. Repetition of words in writing can be just as tiring and worse, boring. They kill the cocktail. Thankfully, we do have the thesaurus, so you can avoid such annoying repetition. But why stop there? A thesaurus can be so much more. Used wisely, it can give you greater opportunities to artfully shape and steer your communication. For instance, take the title of this presentation, which was a quote from Rudyard Kipling. Words are, of course, the most powerful drug known to mankind. It's a captivating quote. It arouses interest and curiosity. And dare I say, by using the word drug, it is provocative too, which of course is why I used it. The word drug conjures all manner of ideas and imagery. Perhaps when you read it, you had a mental image of Kipling snorting a line of words, gouging himself on a dictionary, before passing out having overdosed on an encyclopedia. Or was that just me? Seriously though, if we bring the thesaurus to bear on the word drug, we can quickly jump from drug to medicine, to pill, to supplement, to natural remedy. And in doing so, transform the way someone else would think about what it is we are describing. If we were talking about vitamin D, all of those words would be accurate, yet the perception each creates will likely be quite different. So get yourself a thesaurus. Ideally, you want a physical copy, rather than relying on the inbuilt version which may have come with your word processor software. Because not only do you often have more word alternatives in a physical book, but you also can scan the pages and gain inspiration for words and phrases you would never think of otherwise. Think of it like flicking through a recipe book looking for ideas and inspiration. Just remember to choose wisely though. Let your desired emotion guide your choice, rather than simply, "Ooh, that's a cool word." Don't overdo it. Make every ingredient or word count. Or to quote two great minds, "Do not say a little in many words, but a great deal in a few," said Pythagoras. "The secret of being boring is to say everything," said Voltaire. What I'm saying is, predictably, and like all good things, too much of anything can be fatal. I could fill a page with copious amounts of words, even beautiful and exciting ones, and the result would be terrible. It would be as if I poured a brandy cocktail, a gin one and a rum one into one glass and topped it up with beer and a whiskey chaser. Separately, each might have worked, but together, yuck. Your attempt at creating a perfect brain juice cocktail would be repellent from the get-go. So choose wisely. Make every word count. Admittedly, when speaking, this is a little bit more of a challenge. And as I said at the very beginning of today, we are often halfway to the conclusion of what we are saying before we consider what we have already said. So be mindful. Give yourself time to consider what you are about to say before you say it. Or as some wise fellow once remarked, be sure to taste your words before you spit them out. However, when it comes to writing, you have all the time in the world. So, if a word is lacking, change it. If a section of words does not add to your message, then delete them. Every word and every phrase must earn its place on the page. Don't get possessive of your writing. Your ability to delete has to be on par with your ability to write. Even though you may be happy with the words you have already written, can you cut out some phrases, sentences, or even whole paragraphs? Does the cut version still convey the same message and meaning? When comparing the cut version to the original, which is best? When you do this, you may surprise yourself when a massacre of your text creates a better message with extra punch. As a final word on cutting things out, let's quickly sound the death knell for business speak and all things gobbledygook. What I'm saying is, don't be a turkey. The word gobbledygook was first coined by American politician Maury Maverick in a memo of 1944, where, under the threat of being shot, he banned anyone from using gobbledygook language. He had made up the word gobbledygook because he thought it sounded like the noise of a turkey. So don't be a turkey who induces confusion, disinterest, and boredom with their communication. Avoid gobbledygook. Avoid jargon. Never rely on your recipient needing to know complex buzz terms or some form of convoluted business speak. Just say it simply. To demonstrate my point, consider this gobbledygook versus its plain alternative. I will treat your tax return for all purposes as though you sent it in response to a notice from us which required you to deliver it to us by the day we received it. Don't worry about the deadline. He who conveys joyfulness consequent to everyone else conveys joyfulness of utmost extent. He who laughs last laughs longest. It is imperative to engender the articulation of notions through the application of a non-Byzantine lexicon. Speak simply. Because as a cuddly bear once said, "For I am a bear of very little brain, and big words bother me." So if you think you have slightly jargonized, gobbledygook-laden passage of writing, then merely ask yourself, what is it I'm actually trying to say? More often than not, whatever you then say as an answer to that question will be a less complicated and more straightforward explanation. So don't be a turkey, use that instead. Simple. Now, talking of turkey, let's finish my final point from where I began. At the start of today's presentation, you would be forgiven for thinking Michael has finally lost it. But of course, my apparent craziness was deliberate. Besides being an example of an attention grabber and something called a pattern interrupt, which I'll explain another time, my kebab story demonstrated the most important part of any form of communication. Never be afraid to have a kebab if the urge takes you. Only joking. The single most important part of any form of communication, the absolute key to being an artful wordsmith, is this. Use the same language as the other person, because when you do, they will naturally be more open and attentive to you, your needs, and your influence. So just to end the kebab story, thanks to my little bit of Turkish, the goodwill of the kebab shop owner has continued right up to the present day. No matter what the time frame between visits, and we're talking months, he still remembers me and often gives me a little extra, whether extra meat in the kebab or more free drinks. Naturally, I always respond, "Çok teşekkür ederim." And the same will be true to whoever you are communicating with. You see, it is said there are around 7,000 languages, though I would argue there are nearly 8 billion, one for every person on earth. We each have our own particular vocabulary, and when writing or talking to someone, you want to know as much of their vocabulary as you can, because when you do, their world will open up to you. And of everything I have described to you today, it is so easy to do. On the simplest level, if they have referred to something as being, say, excellent, it is not good, fantastic, or amazing. It is excellent. So when you then use that exact same word, you will invoke everything that excellent specifically means to them. And the more words like this you know, the more it will seem you are fluent in their language. Similarly, if they avoid certain words, then you avoid them too. For instance, it is not uncommon for a son or daughter to avoid swearing in front of their parents, because that's not the language of the family. However, outside the family, those same effing taboo words might be used regularly. None of this is rocket science. As Nelson Mandela once said, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. So once again, his words bring us back to emotion, where motivation, compelling someone to act, gaining understanding are all a lot easier to achieve. So wrapping things up, my aim today was not to dictate or direct how you write or speak. Instead, I wanted to give you pause for thought, to realize the importance of emotion and how you can easily inject it into your communications, to know the difference between functional communication and one that is compelling, to be inspired by the ideas from sales and marketing and then make them your own, to push even further that ideal that any BA already holds true. It is not about you, it is always about them. To understand that the least important word in any communication is I. To become playful with language and its exquisite ability to tickle the brain, to concoct a potent brew of brain juice cocktail, to be an engaging business analyst. As a final thought, and before we get to the Q&A, I want to widen the context of what we have discussed to life in general and how words are so important. In George Orwell's dystopian novel, 1984, one of the central ideas was what he called newspeak, a language created by the ruling body, the party. It had a simplified and restricted vocabulary designed to limit the individual's ability to think or describe subversive ideas like free will and self-expression. Ideas which the party deemed criminal, specifically thought crime. In essence, newspeak was a form of control, a way to dumb down the masses. When writing 1984, Orwell was not simply being a creative author with an intriguing idea. He was trying to make a point he believed in strongly. His worldview was based on his observations of Germany, Italy, and Russia in the 1930s and 40s, and how dictatorship had affected the language of those countries. His concern was simple, and as he said himself in an essay on politics and the English language, If thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought. The totalitarian regimes like those described earlier and the fictional one in Orwell's 1984 knew this. They knew the sheer power of words, how words can move people, change people, inspire people. And every time you pick up a pen, tap on your keyboard, send a text, or simply have a chat, that potential is in your hands. For as author and poet Pearl Strachan-Hurd once said, words have more power than atom bombs. Handle them carefully. I've been Michael Christon. You have been wonderful. Thanks for listening.